Welcome to episode 6. It's a villain who will give me a 20-minute lecture for daring to refer to him as such. It's Dukat from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. The Cardassians. Star Trek's second, less ham-fisted attempt to introduce a snake-like humanoid species. Today, we'll be looking at the second, or third, or fourth most devious snake person. Okay, maybe top 10 at least. Though there is no doubt some stupidity to be had in the wider Cardassian Union, as its most prominent dickhead. Spoonhead. Dukat is probably responsible for 90% of all Cardassian idiocy we're forced to endure. But I'd never admit as much because Dukat is a raging narcissist who thinks of himself as the hero of his own warped story.
One man's villain is another man's hero.
Not without his finer qualities, Dukat is a shrewd political opportunist, an accomplished military leader, an eloquent communicator, and a charismatic, imposing figure. To some people anyway.
Thank you.
Who, despite being incapable of retaining his rank for any meaningful length of time, somehow managed to become the head of the Cardassian Union. Well, kinda. But the trouble is, no matter how much ground he makes, Dukat's progress is consistently derailed by his base desires and the irrational decisions that flow from them. Point 1. Dukat is a rudderless egotist motivated by petty personal concerns. His true goals are insignificant yet impossible to achieve. So what does winning actually look like to Dukat? Well, as a legendary shit talker who'll tell you his motivations are concerned with typical Cardassian shtick. To protect his family, to serve the will of the Cardassian state, or to save or empower the Cardassian people.
What I did to make Cardassia strong again.
But his actions and endeavors tell a very different story.
It's a fake.
Dukat's real motivations can be boiled down to a few simple things. He wants to be famous.
Is there a single statue of me on Bajor?
He wants the respect and approval of his enemies.
Even he refuses to grant me the respect I deserve.
He wants control of Bajor and the love of the Bajoran people, or more accurately, he wants to be in a position where he can coerce Bajoran women into sleeping with him, most of all Kira. Oh, and on the day-to-day, he just enjoys toying with people for no reason other than his own personal satisfaction.
I do get a certain perverse pleasure out of it.
And that's pretty much it. All of his achievements, even great ones, are in service to these hidden motivations.
Interesting, yet somewhat petty.
It seems obvious this guy is suffering from numerous undiagnosed psychological ailments. He's a psychiatrist goldmine, a total lifer.
Really? Perhaps we have met.
Deeply confused and conflicted, Dukat reps the most brainless of Cardassian ideologies 1 minute.
Rom is an enemy of the state, and enemies of the state do not deserve mercy.
Then plays the rebel and grandstands progressive policies the next.
I suggest we return to the issue of the children.
He spends so much time justifying his horrific actions, he must live in a perpetual state of cognitive dissonance.
This kind of thinking is only going to make you feel worse.
Dukat is obsessed with projecting a phony image as a benevolent, thoughtful leader.
Community leader!
But his blatant attempts to seek approval from Cisco, Kira and co. does not lend itself to gaining the respect he craves. It's a self-defeating strategy.
Is that why I'm here? To flatter you? To tell you what a good job you've done and how happy we all are to have you back?
The guy just comes off as a desperate, annoying hypocrite, harassing Cisco and Kira with video calls at all hours of the night, then rolling up on DS9 without so much as a subspace text.
I'm really not in the mood for noisy, crowded, and vulgar today.
Part of the problem is that Dukat is actually quite fond of his opponents.
And you were my dear old friend, come to visit me in my cell. Hope you don't take this the wrong way, Major, but I've always admired you.
A pointless sentiment that often stands directly at odds with his agenda and role.
A sentimental fool.
Not to mention, his pointless approval seeking relies on the internal thought processes of people who already detest him.
When I look at my father, I have a hard time seeing a murderer.
And when I look at him, I have a hard time seeing anything else.
and tend to judge his actions using their own non-Cardassian morality.
This Bajoran obsession with alleged Cardassian improprieties during the occupation is really quite distasteful.
I suppose if you're Bajoran, so is the occupation.
Ultimately, the prime targets of Dukat's crusade have thoughts on him that range from pity to utter disdain. If he'd just stuck with trying to gain the respect of his own peers like most other people do, he could have been a Cardassian legend.
A true victory is to make your enemies see they were wrong to oppose you in the first place. To force them to acknowledge your greatness.
If that's his criteria, then Dukat never achieves any true victories whatsoever. And you can't even give him a bit of hollow appeasement. No, his expectation is that his enemies must authentically acknowledge his brilliance.
I didn't see all the things you had to struggle with day after day. I don't think I can pass judgment.
I'm asking for your opinion of me, and I'd find it hard to believe you don't have one.
Within this context, most of Dukat's true goals are not only inconsequential, but also impossible to achieve. Okay, he does manage to take advantage of a few innocent Bajoran slave women, we'll give him that one. While he is conscious of at least some of the reasons for his behavior,
Personal reasons can be quite an incentive.
Dukat's arrogance and self-delusions make him incapable of a deeper critical self-reflection. If he was, he'd realize his petty personal obsessions regularly cause him to self-sabotage and run the risk of destroying both his and Cardassia's real-world gains. Point 2. Dukat achieves greatness in spite of his strategic shortcomings and poor motivations, selling out Cardassia for selfish reasons. His dilly-dallying at Deep Space Nine brings about his ultimate downfall. So let's wind it back to the first mention of his career as an officer on a Cardassian military vessel. And already Dukat seems to be struggling to gain the respect of those around him, because despite being a Glynn, a rank similar to that of Starfleet's ensign, he was made to clean out a compartment where 3 men had suffered an explosive decompression.
I didn't sleep for a week after that.
They're treating him like the damn janitor. Don't they have crewmen for this? Wait, so you're telling me these people actually have to clean things?
I'm as curious about this as you are.
Eventually, Dukat secures the rank of Gull and is made the prefect of Bajor, a period in his life which is both the source of his anxieties, while also being the position he secretly longs to restore. But I'll let Dukat explain, as he does so often at length.
You are responsible for the murder of over 5 million Bajorans on your watch. True or false?
False! I tried to save lives during my administration. I was convinced that a gentler hand was required to deal with the Bajorans. Child labor was abolished. Medical care was improved. Food rations were increased. At the end of 1 month of my administration, the death rate had dropped by 20%. They blew up an orbital dry dock. I ordered 200 suspected members of the resistance rounded up and executed. 200 lives for 200 lives. Time and again, I would reach out with an open hand of friendship, and time and again, they would slap it away.
And there you have it. He tried to be a nice guy, but those ungrateful Bajoran terrorists had the audacity to want to free Bajor, and they wouldn't settle for anything less. How dare they? Dukat's entire approach was obviously naive and futile. Simply put, it is impossible to bring about anything close to justice in an operational environment that is inherently unjust. You're just pissing into the wind.
Oh, now don't go spouting off your holier-than-thou Federation fair play dogma.
So you decrease the worker death rate in the labor camps. Why are there even deaths occurring in the first place? More food rations? Thanks for giving back a tiny morsel of what you stole, I guess. If Dukat really wanted to take a moral stand, he would have refused the job on Bajor in the first place and celebrated when they left.
Why didn't you resign in protest?
But instead, he supports the Bajoran occupation on the sketchy basis of Cardassian cultural superiority and their need for resources.
We were almost a century ahead of them in every way. We did not choose to be the superior race.
And he sees the withdrawal as a massive error.
The withdrawal of Bajor was a decision made by the civilian leaders, one which I clearly opposed.
With his little kingdom and harem of Bajoran slave women about to disappear, I think it's pretty clear what kind of soft touch he was really all about. He just wanted some less awkward pillow talk, and to cover for the fact he's a mass murdering rapist.
All my crimes, I'm such a monster, such an evil man.
Ironically, despite his protestations against the withdrawal, Dukat ends up getting blamed for it, starting another notable Dukat trend, his tendency to be patsied by his own government.
I wouldn't worry, this happens all the time.
And so here we first meet him with his tail between his legs, bored like a dog without his toys. He's made himself the unofficial liaison officer to Deep Space Nine, turning up to start shit off with Cisco just 2 weeks after he left, delivering a thinly veiled threat that serves no purpose and revealing his hand in the process.
Alone in this remote outpost with poor defense systems. Your Cardassian neighbors will be quick to respond to any problems you might have.
A pattern of behavior that never seems to let up.
Major Kira can have a runabout to me within an hour.
An hour can be a very long time, especially if you happen to encounter something unexpected. I knew all about these controls before I ever came on board. Tell me when we're in torpedo range.
And when he's not doing that, he's wasting time trying to sell snake oil to smart people.
We had no idea that Bajoran prisoners were still being held on Cardassia 4.
It doesn't help that he comes across as insincere at almost all times.
I contacted you out of concern for your safety.
And as his enemies soon realize, he is usually operating under a hidden agenda. For all his posturing, Dukat ends up being extremely predictable.
Captain Cisco bet me that you would thank him for the rescue before you started complaining.
And it's not long until his phony act starts to unravel, virtue signaling about wanting to save some war orphans that he himself left behind.
My fight to bring these orphans back to their homeland.
It soon becomes obvious the entire thing was a ploy to embarrass his political opponent.
Jomat Luson clearly recalls that the officer who brought in Rugal was attached to Terok No.
It would have been a pretty impressive long con, if only he hadn't made the whole thing traceable back to him.
A crew of Ferengi scrap peddlers could do better than that.
There are times when Dukat appears to be acting selflessly. For example, when he undertakes a clandestine mission with Cisco to take on the Maquis, an apparent attempt to avoid war with the Federation, eventually patsied by his own government again.
He said that you were the one responsible for smuggling weapons into the demilitarized zone. That if the Maquis did not execute you, then the Central Command would.
He may have sensed the winds had turned against him, and taking an oppositional stance may simply be his best path back to power. One of Dukat's most embarrassing little junkets is when he turns up to DS9 to gloat after they accidentally activated his Cardassian security program.
Garrick, groveling in a corner. That alone makes my trip worthwhile.
Lording over Kira and the others, he takes up residence in his former office, tries to coerce Kira into a deal she would obviously never accept.
I think it is time to re-establish a permanent Cardassian presence aboard this station.
I will destroy this station before I ever give it back to the Cardassians.
Pointlessly revealing his true agenda.
But once my troops are in place, I think you'll find it very difficult to get them to leave.
Before the lack of respect he suffers from his colleagues bites him in the ass yet again.
Energize.
Dukat, if you are seeing this recording, it means you tried to abandon your post. The destruct sequence can no longer be halted.
Program addition or not, this guy was willing to come aboard the station with seemingly no clue about its current status.
I see. The auto-destruct program has begun.
For all he knew, it could have been about to self-destruct. And we couldn't breeze past this episode without highlighting Garrick's hilarious truth bomb.
She's much too busy trying to save this station to be impressed with your incessant posturing.
Garrick!
And even if she weren't, she has much better taste than to be attracted to you. You, a married man.
And so begins Dukat's pitiful quest to ingratiate himself to Kira in an attempt to get in her pants. A woman who seems disgusted at the mere mention of his name and too intelligent to fall victim to his grooming campaign.
Are you really so deluded that you actually believe that we're gonna have some kind of intimate relationship?
As an extremely headstrong person and a prominent Bajoran resistance fighter, it's almost as if Dukat sees betting her as the ultimate confirmation that his previous policies were justified.
You are the embodiment of the new Bajor. A Bajoran born out of the ashes of the occupation. A Bajoran tempered with Cardassian steel.
Not to mention, he used to bang her mum. But considering Kira's skill set, Dukat's attempted courting of her is a life-threatening situation in itself. It's not long until Dukat's tactical shortcomings are also laid bare. Despite Cardassians being well known for their trickery in battle, Dukat consistently prefers a thoughtless brute force approach.
I might be able to convince...
I have a better idea. Order all warships in that sector to converge on the Defiant.
It's a decoy. They're trying to draw your patrol ships out of position.
You should be commended. I only wish we had someone with such keen tactical instincts.
Though he does play the political game fairly well at this stage, switching sides during a political revolution on Cardassia, he is promoted to legate and named military advisor to the Datapa Council. But it's not long before Dukat falls afoul of the establishment once again, after he undertakes perhaps his only truly selfless mission. Choosing not to kill his half-Bajoran daughter, Dukat brings her back to Cardassia, which essentially ruins his life.
They demoted you.
Exactly 1 week after my mother disowned me, and my wife took our children and left.
Though I'd still argue this course of action was entirely unnecessary. Once he had decided not to kill her, the best solution for all involved would be to send her away like he originally intended, or take up Kira's offer.
Why not just send her away again? Let me take her to Bajor. No one has to know that you're her father.
It's basically what ends up happening anyway. So nice guy Dukat in this one moment takes a truly moral stand at a great personal cost. But don't worry, you just know this altruism ain't gonna last. Demoted and assigned to the role of freighter captain, a desperate Dukat seeks revenge against some warmongering Klingons, with eyes on impressing the Datapa Council and restoring his position.
When we do destroy that bird of prey, it will no doubt go a long way toward restoring my reputation.
Taking an extremely reckless course of action.
Fire!
Their shields were down, and we didn't penetrate their hull.
You'd think a captain should be well aware of the offensive capabilities of his own vessel, but I guess not. Literally the only thing that saves Dukat is the fact the Klingons have their own idiotic code, which prevents the sassing of such plebs. Propped up by his new dude bro Damar, a simple man with obvious motivations, a counterpoint to Dukat's erraticness. Not that this friendship will do him any good. In the face of a superior foe, Dukat is unimaginative and defeatist.
They were never designed to operate aboard a moving spacecraft. And these cargo bays were never designed to hold them.
Unless his apparent lack of battle adaptability was merely part of his wider scheme to keep Kira by his side.
I have a lot to learn from you.
In which case, it's still a risky, futile effort, but well played nonetheless. Discovering his larger efforts were also in vain.
The Council is looking for a diplomatic solution.
Dukat now ignores an offer of redemption.
But what is the point of being a military advisor to a government that won't fight?
Instead choosing to take on a dangerous one-ship campaign against the Klingon Empire. But before we get carried away praising the guy again, this is most likely Dukat recognizing that a Datapa Council is on its way out, and that standing against them and achieving military victories against the Klingons will turn things in his favor. Plus it might keep Kira nearby. It's merely happenstance this course of action will also benefit Cardassia. But one thing that definitely won't benefit Cardassia in the long run is its entrance into the Dominion. That's right, we've made it to Dukat's greatest personal triumph and also his most serious era. Dukat claims entering the Dominion will save Cardassia from ruin.
Cardassia was on the edge of an abyss, Major.
But in reality, he's traded Cardassia's future and betrayed the wider Alpha Quadrant for some superficial short-term gains, most of which flow straight to him.
You should see the monument they're erecting in my honor at the gateway to the Imperial Plaza.
Is that why you sold out your people to the Dominion? For a monument?
But at least he's been all humble about it.
I prefer the title Gaul. So much more hands-on.
How about Dominion puppet?
There's no doubt the Cardassian Union was not in a good way, but the better opportunity would have been to rally the people and start a rebuilding phase, not make Cardassia a permanent vassal state. Dukat seems to have deluded himself into thinking the Dominion will actually give him control of the Alpha Quadrant.
But look what we're getting in return. The Alpha Quadrant itself.
He operates under the false assumption that he can join the Dominion and still do whatever he wants.
Must I remind you, the Dominion just signed a non-aggression pact with Bajor.
The Dominion might have. I never did.
And he intends to shake Cardassia free of Dominion control after the war.
Now, Dumar, that's no way to talk about our valued allies. Not until this war is over, anyway.
All of which is extremely naive, considering the Dominion demands total obedience and submission, and can breed soldiers at a rate that far outstrips anything Cardassia is capable of. Predictably, it isn't long until Dukat is basically just Wei Yun's bitch.
Where the Dominion leads, I will follow.
I never doubted it.
Not to mention, he turns into an ass-kisser the moment one of the founders shows up.
If there's anything you need while you're here, please let me know.
As part of the con, Wei Yun does give Dukat superficial control over the course of events. Bolstered by Dominion forces, he achieves his most impressive military conquests, and we bear witness to one of his lowest schemes to date.
In that bottle is enough Varaxta poison to kill at least a dozen Cardassians. It was delivered to Tekenic Gomor less than 20 minutes ago.
Eventually seizing himself the big prize, Deep Space Nine.
You mean Tarak Nor?
But not before Sisko and co managed to mine the wormhole. Back in his throne room close to Kira and with nearby Bajor potentially up for grabs, he's closer than ever to re-establishing a regular supply of that sweet Bajoran poontang.
How does that help us?
Stupidly, the Dominion seems to delegate the task of clearing the minefield to Dukat, who is more concerned with being a sex pest to Kira.
There's a bond between us.
No.
Fluffing around with his daughter and fidgeting with Sisko's baseball. It's practically his blankie.
This is irrelevant and insulting.
His personal feelings getting in the way again. This time his hard-on for Kira and soft touch towards his opponents, leading him to mismanage the very real threat of sabotage. Not that Wei Yun helped all that much along the way.
I want my Bajoran security officers reinstated.
Consider it done.
Eventually, it's glorified PA Damar who comes up with a method of clearing the mines, who at this stage of his career, despite being the saner of the pair, is still a careless alcoholic.
You reconfigure the field generators and refocus the emitters. Turn the deflector array into one big anti-graviton beam.
Something deflector, something anti-graviton beam. It all sounds like standard technobabble stuff. It's not clear what the full scope of Dukat's mine clearing operation was, but after more than 3 months of waiting, only for Hype Man Damar to solve the puzzle in between benders, you just know something has gone seriously awry.
Kanar with Damar. That rhymes.
But as usual with Dukat, all may not be what it appears to be. There could be hidden motivations for this lengthy delay. He may not actually want the Dominion forces to come through the wormhole, as an increased Dominion presence will diminish his influence and make it far more difficult to shake off their leash when the time comes. Or he may simply want to keep himself close to Bajor and Kira, a position he may no longer have access to if the Dominion forces take over. But even if there is truth to these ideas, both of these plans are extremely short-sighted, only offering a temporary solution. Though that's assuming Dukat is even conscious of his own motivations.
What are you babbling on about now?
With Dukat finally standing on the cusp of victory, he can't help but declare it prematurely.
We didn't defeat the Federation by being cautious.
We haven't defeated it yet.
Rather than preparing for a potential attack or closely monitoring the mine clearing operation, he's dedicated himself to squabbling with his daughter.
I want you to go and convince her to speak with me.
Sir, I really feel I would be more valuable tracking the enemy fleet.
I've given you an order, Damar.
Tasking the caustic Damar with a diplomatic mission.
Don't you think resolving family squabbles can wait until after we've won this war?
Yes, of course, you're quite right.
Federation is moving against us.
That's right. Now I want to know exactly what went on between you and Zial.
Not for any good personal reason, mind you, just for his own boundless vanity.
We're on the verge of a great victory. And when it comes, I want my daughter at my side.
Brimming with overconfidence.
The Defiant is no match for this station. Cisco wants to commit suicide. I say we let him.
Dukat's obsession with taking on Cisco directly becomes his undoing. His shattered ego now sees his leadership break down completely.
Sir? Victory was within our grasp.
We have to evacuate the station, sir.
Oh well, I guess he'll be okay, as long as he has Zial. And so Dukat, who had already suffered a crippling hit to his psyche after being too emotionally invested in literally everything he does, is sent over the edge by the death of his daughter, suffering a total mental breakdown. To be honest, I'm not really sure if it's fair to criticize Dukat from this point onwards. He was always a bit of a basket case, but now he's just not all there. Let's do it anyway.
He's a Cardassian. That's reason enough.
Stranded on a planet with Cisco, rather than using this as an opportunity to escape, he goes all in on a final pitiful attempt to have Cisco acknowledge the perceived slights against him.
I have to know that he respects me. I think I've earned it. I have been vilified by ignorant, small-minded people throughout the quadrant.
You were a soldier and you had to carry out your orders.
Precisely.
Even his own internal voices are telling him he's about to be played.
He's patronizing you.
Kill him and be done with it.
But still he persists. With a bit of prodding, Dukat eventually embraces his villainy.
You should have killed them all.
Yes! Yes! That's right, isn't it? I should have killed them all.
Letting go of his phony compassion shtick, which I guess is some sort of progress, but the trouble is all of his hidden motivations, the real source of his incompetence, remain more or less intact. And now he's hitched on another troublesome obsession, revenge.
From this day forward, Bajor is dead! All of Bajor!
He starts by letting his sentiment get in the way yet again, leaving the emissary alive rather than killing him and delivering the Bajorans a crushing initial blow.
A non-emotional response would be more useful.
A nicety that even Cisco is now going to forego.
From now on, it's him or me.
And trust me, despite Cisco having a saintly level of tolerance for Dukat's bullshit, you do not want to be on this guy's bad side. But there is one final twist in Dukat's mental rollercoaster ride, and predictably it's another turn in the wrong direction. Point 3. Dukat goes off the deep end with the Pah-wraiths. Initially, Dukat is using the Pah-wraiths as a vehicle for his revenge against Cisco and the Bajorans, which almost makes sense.
I admit that when I first allowed myself to become a vessel for the Pah-wraith, it was purely out of self-serving reasons.
But it isn't long until he seems to have some sort of genuine faith in the Pah-wraiths.
You've gone from being a self-important egotist to a self-deluded madman.
Which is not only a complete betrayal of Cardassian ideals, but just plain illogical. Now apparently under their influence after stupidly offering himself for possession.
But I had no idea the effect it would have on me.
The Pah-wraiths are portrayed as the demons to the Prophet's angels, and although the provable components of Bajor's religion gives it a bit more clout than most, as is patently obvious to all non-Bajorans, the Pah-wraiths and the Prophets, or wormhole aliens, are just that, aliens. Non-corporeal beings who may have some nifty powers beyond us mere mortals. But these guys aren't even at Q's level, and for all their power, they struggle to understand simple concepts such as linear time.
What is this time?
Dukat seems to be willfully ignoring the Pah-wraiths are obviously not gods, but limited beings who will operate according to their own agendas. Here's no way to predict how this will pan out. I wouldn't put money on the Pah-wraiths delivering the goods, since historically they've been viewed as evil. For all he knows, he's just been used. despite claiming to have made some personal breakthroughs.
I no longer have a need for conquest or power.
Dukat resolves to ride the Pah-wraiths to power in an attempt to bring an apocalypse to Bajor, with him ruling over the survivors.
The release of the Pah-wraiths will mean the end of Bajor.
The old Bajor, perhaps. But from its ashes, a new Bajor will arise.
Who will be left to see it?
Those the gods find worthy.
Or perhaps worse.
An entire universe set in flames!
Dukat's first red flag comes when his messing around with the wormhole doesn't go exactly to plan. Though it does seem to give the Dominion a temporary advantage, it ends up contributing to their ultimate downfall. Not that Dukat really cares for them or Cardassia anymore.
I may have failed to reopen the wormhole, but I assure you I have no regrets.
Dukat then takes his rabid egotism to its logical conclusion, establishing a cult. And this lot are more gullible than the usual Kool-Aid guzzlers.
Born of the love between Benyon and Mika, was transformed in her womb into a living symbol of the covenant I made with you.
Getting his first real success in many years, finally beating another servile Bajoran. Not that that will stop him fawning over Kira. Everything still seems rooted in his desire to have sex with Bajorans.
Dr. Cox would be so proud.
Except now his plans are more ridiculous than ever.
By recreating some kind of idealized version of the occupation, because that's what you've done here. You have your station back. Bajorans to serve your every whim.
Though he has definitely embraced the dark side as promised, attempting to kill his entire cult in what appears to be an exercise in saving face.
Good.
Now it's time to catch up with the bro Damar, and despite being governed by emotion and revenge, Dukat seems to completely forgive him for killing Zial, misdirecting his anger towards Sisko.
I don't hold you responsible for Ziel's death. You may have fired the phaser, but it was Benjamin Sisko who forced your hand.
In reality, it's all a cover. Dukat's hypocrisy being what actually pushed Zial into the resistance.
I could never be like you.
Her presence on the station serving as a ploy to force Kira to spend more time with him.
Splendid. We'll dine in my quarters at 2200 hours.
This guy's gotta be the second worst father in all of Star Trek. Ultimately, Damar, who is genuinely motivated by furthering the agenda of Cardassia and is willing to put aside his personal feelings in pursuit of that end.
I did hate her. That's a luxury I can no longer afford, and neither can you.
Throws off the shackles of Dukat's terrible Dominion deal, and in death will no doubt become a revered and respected figure, whereas Dukat will probably go down as one of Cardassia's most foolish, disastrous leaders.
The emissary has spoken.
Dukat now poses as a humble Bajoran farmer in an effort to manipulate Kai Wynn, and after years of play-acting humility, he doesn't do a half-bad job. Though it still seems risky to show up at Deep Space Nine, where plenty of people might recognize him. Luckily, Kai Wynn, a stupid villain in her own right, wasn't smart enough to ever verify his identity. The next Pah-wraith red flag comes soon enough, when they choose to blind Dukat for daring to read the Coaster Motion. The fact that you need blood to read this thing should give you some idea of their intentions. These Pah-wraith jokers seem harsh and unpredictable, and let's be honest, any plan that involves sleeping with Kai Wynn just ain't worth doing. I don't care what you could win.
Hello, child.
Things come to a head in the fire caves, where Dukat is chosen as the preferable option for demonic emissary over Kai Wynn. Not that that proves anything. Once released, the Pah-wraiths could just as easily kill him as give him what he wants. This is all still a massive dice roll. A classic stoush between good and evil commences, with Dukat predictably undone by his ego yet again, wasting time trying to force Sisko to acknowledge a victory that hasn't quite happened yet.
Now it's time to resolve our differences and face the ultimate truth. I warn Benjamin. You've lost.
Dukat's final and most literal downfall, flame grilled by Master Chef Sisko, apparently now trapped in the fire caves with the Pah-wraiths, which all things considered is probably the best outcome he could have hoped for. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to feel the love of the Pah-wraiths. And don't forget to throw Cisco's baseball towards that like button.